Hello, everyone, and welcome to We Go Boldly, the podcast where we celebrate women stepping into their power and living their most authentic lives. We are also thrilled to be a part of the Power Moms Network. At Power Moms Network, we are empowering women, or I'm sorry, we're empowering moms, well, women too, and creating a community of mothers, mentoring other moms to greatness. It's a cool place to be. You should definitely check it out and join us there. It's a lot of fun. So, speaking of creating community, though, are you ready to connect with an incredible community of like-minded women? Head over to goboldlyinitiative.com/weekly circle to learn all about our Go Boldly Weekly Women's Circle. It's your space to share, to grow, to thrive alongside women who are as passionate about personal growth as you are. So sign up today, and let's embrace the journey together. Let's do it as a collective. It's a lot more fun that way. And with all that being said, hello, Tova. Welcome to our intro. um, what are we talking about today?
Today, we are talking about boundaries, and boundaries are great New Year's resolutions. If you are stuck on, I have to set some New Year's resolutions, boundaries are great New Year's resolutions. I saw a funny reel, I was going to say talking meme, a funny reel.
I'm going to call them that from now on.
Yeah. Where they said, just say boundaries are your policies. Like, I'm sorry, that's against my policy. And I've actually been with the boys, been like, no, no, the Copan policy is this. This is our Copan policy.
I
We,
like that. I'm going to borrow that. That's a good
yeah, and
idea.
it's fun. It makes it a little more like it's coming down from corporate guys. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
like HR just sent this in. What are we going to
Yeah,
do?
I don't know. But honestly, pick a boundary, right? And like say it like it's a policy. It feels good. Anyway, we've all recovered. We're a few weeks post family time, and it's a great time to reflect on what went really well, whose energy lifted you up, whose energy did not, and where are some good places to build in some boundaries. And honestly, even the people that you love the most, boundaries can be really really healthy with. So when we're talking about creating boundaries, we are also talking about figuring out how to create the life that you want, right? Because speaking of that energy, if you have energy that is pulling you down, how are you going to write the story that you want to write? Which, by the way, is happening in our season 12, where we talk about writing your own story. How are you going to do that if you're not setting boundaries?
Yeah, and boundaries are one of our favorite topics here at We Go Boldly because they're just unbelievably necessary to your happiness. If you're not setting boundaries, you are essentially saying, "Hey world, do whatever you want to me. I'm not in charge of any part of me. Go for it." Right? And that is really unpleasant. Like it doesn't feel good. It leads to resentment, like all kinds of stuff. So, setting boundaries is something we talk about a lot because it is so important. And just as a friendly reminder, and I'm sure we say this in the episode too, but boundaries are not punishments for people, right? They're just a way of saying, this is my limit. This is where I want to, exist. This is the space in which I feel good. These are the feelings that I have. This is the energy I have, and this is the energy I want. And like you said, Tova, you can't write your own story if you're not setting boundaries. You can't say to the universe, go ahead and do whatever you want to me, and then think you're somehow gonna like direct your own pathway. That doesn't work. You have to work together, right? We co-create with the universe.
Well, and you can't call in good energy if you're telling the universe that you're accepting bad energy.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
and we love hard work. We are big fans of hard work and that we do a lot of hard work. There is a little magic, I think, out there in the universe, and it's important to set some boundaries, make some policies in your life to say, no, that violates my policy, and that's not going to work for me. And this is the story that I want to write.
Yeah,
And I can't do that if you're violating my policies.
right.
So we would love you to have you check out this reshare of our episode all about how boundaries will set you free, and then come back in just 2 short weeks to join us for our first episode of season 12, all about writing your own story.
The Power Moms Network, empowering moms to lift the world.
Welcome. I'm Riley Karsh.
I'm Tova Kopan.
We are thrilled to bring you the We Go Boldly podcast.
Let's talk big burning questions, life changes, and maybe a bit of personal business.
Let's be bold and brave together. Are you ready?
I am. Here comes the show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to season 7 of We Go Boldly, the podcast. We are so very thrilled to have you with us. I am Riley Karsh, one of your very excited and happy to be here co-hosts, and this is...
I am Tova Kopan, your other exciting co-host.
We're changing it up a little bit this season. Trying to remember to tell you who we are, because, it's helpful to know who's talking at any given moment. But we're thrilled to have you with us. We're so grateful for the people who listen to us and who communicate with us and let us know, your thoughts on the podcast and what you want to hear about, what you want to learn about, what you like, what you don't like, all those fun things. So we just we talk about gratitude a lot, and we want to make sure that we are expressing our gratitude for our listeners, our sponsors, our guests, everyone who participates in our initiative and in our podcast and all the things we do, because it's why we do it. And so I want to put that out there, that we are very, very grateful for all of you and everything you bring to us as we go through this extremely exciting and interesting process that we're going through. So with that being said, this is our second episode of season 7. Lucky number 7, I guess.
It's great you said that, because I was thinking of the 7-year itch, but I think
were you?
lucky number 7
No
is
way.
better.
No itchiness. We'll get you some powder. I'm punchy today, people. It's very
man,
exciting.
she was bubbly the last episode, and she's punchy this episode.
Punchy. I'm punchy and bubbly. It's good stuff. So today we are tackling, again, because it never stops being a topic of great importance, and also one of my favorite topics. We are talking about boundaries, and we were talking specifically about how boundaries can set you free, which seems oppositional, right? That boundaries seem like they would be limiting, but they are, in fact, the opposite of limiting. Before we get to that, I want to take a minute to say hello to Tova and chat with her. So how are you today, my fantastical, wonderful, amazing co-host, Tova? What's going on?
I am delighted. I feel so. When you're listening to this episode, we will be fully in the fall.
Yes.
But we are not in the fall yet as we record it. And so, but I feel like we're like getting closer. Like the essence of fall is starting to be in the air.
Yeah.
And I was like drinking a little apple cider. Some like good witchy book recommendations were posted on an Instagram feed that I apparently follow. So I'm feeling like
I like the way you phrase that.
Yeah.
That I apparently follow. Who knows how I got there?
So it's so funny when I'll be like following someone that I do, knowingly follow, and they'll like be like, oh yeah, my good friend so and so, and I'll be like, oh, I should follow them, and I'm like, I already do. Cool.
Yep.
But yeah, so I'm excited. I'm also going to, I know you were sharing what we were grateful for. Well, this is coming out just a few days after our first Go Boldly Together circle.
Yes.
That we are launching at the beginning of October. And so it hasn't happened yet in our world, but it's happened in the listeners' world. And so I'm going to be grateful for a very successful first circle event. So
I love that. That's some like super manifesting for anyone who's into manifesting.
it's a little witchy. It's a little alien. It's because I'm watching Roswell, a lot of it. Yeah.
Nice. I like it.
Mm-hmm.
It's good. It's good energy. We're putting it out there that that we're grateful for something that is going to happen in our future, and it's in your present. So let that soak in, listeners. It's
I'm also just going to ramble a little bit longer so we can avoid the topic of boundaries because as
Excellent.
I reflect, as I was listening to you discuss boundaries, and as I was reading the outline for today, I was realizing that I really feel so much more empowered by the boundaries that I've learned to set over the last 2 years. But I do not have confidence in, I'm not going to say I don't know how to set boundaries in. I just don't have confidence in my ability to set boundaries in a romantic relationship.
Mm.
Because I haven't historically set boundaries in a romantic relationship. And so when we first began discussing boundaries, you kind of compared yourself to having like big brick, Trump-esque walls up.
Yes, thank you for
Yes.
that. But
Oh,
yes,
sorry. It's a descriptor we all understand.
it is true.
Um, and although your walls are better because his
Yeah.
were, not funded and very short. So
And for
uh,
all the wrong reasons.
yeah, just yeah. So just walls. And I had, more of like a sieve as a boundary.
Right.
And what I've realized in as I'm dipping my toe ever so gently into romantic relationships again, and that is a very broad use of the word romantic relationships, but the world of potentially having a romantic relationship,
Right.
what I realize is I am back to just the wall where it was like, I do not know how to trust you. I do not even know if I'm going to let myself like you, and so I'm just going to put up this very big wall and then maybe be surprised that you don't actually think I like you. um which has me reflecting on some things this summer. So yeah, so let's just talk about something else so that we don't have to talk about this.
Yeah, no, we're definitely talking about boundaries. Let's do this. So we're going to talk about some definitions like we always do because we want everyone to sort of come to the table from the same position. And so when we're talking about boundaries, we are talking about something that indicates or fixes a limit or the extent of something, right? That's pretty easy to understand, right? Like a fence, a wall, the limit to which something will go, right? So that's a boundary. We could also look at it as the limit of what someone considers to be acceptable behavior, right? So that's maybe a little easier to understand in the context of setting personal boundaries than than the other definition, but they for all intents and purposes they mean the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And one maybe visually will help you understand a little better than the other. So that's why I like to give both definitions because I personally am a visual learner. I don't know if you all know how you learn. It's something that I find very helpful with people is if you know how you learn, it makes it easier to work with you because personally for me, I need to see things to understand them. Some people read them, some people hear them. It depends on how you learn and one is not better than the other. It's just how brains function. So that's kind of the definition of a boundary and where we're starting from. A person with healthy boundaries understands that making their expectations clear to other people helps and to themselves. Let's be very very clear about that. Boundaries are set both with yourself and with other people, and so it's not just boundaries aren't just for other people; they're for yourself and other people. But if you're making your expectation clear, it helps in two ways. It establishes what behavior you will accept from other people, and it establishes what behavior other people can expect from you. And if you want to phrase that in a slightly different way, it establishes what behavior you will accept from yourself, and it establishes what behavior other well, it establishes what behavior you will expect from you. So you can say it in multiple different ways, but that's essentially what we're talking about today.
Yeah, and if we want to make it about me for a little bit longer, I think this is what has my boundary making so flummoxed with the romantic relationship of it all, in the sense that, like, so My friend always, one of my friends from high school always asks if I have some like unrequited love that I could like get back together with. And as far as I can recall, all my loves are requited. I'm not like holding a candle for anyone from, this is not sadly a Hallmark movie in the making, although she is taking me to a Christmas inn, hoping that there's going to be some sort of inn owner in a small town. So there's still hope for a Hallmark movie. But my point is, anyone that I have the potential for a romantic relationship with is probably somebody that I don't know. And so it's like a clean slate. And theoretically, that is a great place to build healthy boundaries. But it leaves me in a palm sweating panic. As opposed to, it, like you said, it's hard to set boundaries. Well, you didn't say this. I'm going to add to what you've said, that it's hard to set boundaries, but can be, when the relationship already has the expectations set. And so you're sort of rebuilding or recrafting the relationship and tweaking it. And you're saying, like, actually, this is how I need this to look going forward, or this went too far in this direction. But just in case anyone else has the experience, I think I can tell that I'm putting a lot of pressure on myself. And forget romantic relationships. This can happen in friendships. It can happen when you are getting a new job and you're like, in fact, I just ran into somebody at a farmer's market this weekend who I knew from her previous job, where she worked banana hours, and she worked so much, and they depended on her so much, and they took advantage of her, and she was always exhausted, and she looked exhausted, and I had never seen her as like internally calm as I saw her. I mean, she was calm. She was at peace. And she said, yeah, sometimes I work late there, but I don't mind. I like to help because she's this new job now. And so she went in knowing that she had to set boundaries. And if you're not accustomed to setting boundaries, it can be scary because you've never gotten like the feedback about it. But I'm going to circle back to what you're saying at the very beginning. It is what lets you be free. Like, here is somebody who, like the woman I saw at the farmer's market, who was setting boundaries in her work and is like, I'm finally doing things in the rest of my life that I probably should have been doing 10 years ago, but whatever, I'm doing them now. Like, she's like, I'm dating because I have time to date. Like, I'm at a farmer's market on a Sunday because I have time to be here. And so, A, it's never too late to set a boundary. And B, they really can let you be free to live your life, both internally and externally, by just opening up your life more.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about what kind of boundaries can be set in the first place, and then we'll go into our first break, and we can come back to this. But the basics of boundaries are that you can establish a boundary with respect to anything. So that's the broad answer. You can always set a boundary. It could be about anything, and it's unique to you. So whatever boundary feels right to you is right. So there's no wrong answers here, which is great, right? Because if you're like me and you're a perfectionist, or if you worry that you're going to make a mistake, or if you're fearful, you're not. You can't. There are no wrong answers. As long as your intention is to set a boundary and not manipulate, or your intention is to set a boundary and not harm somebody else, there's no mistakes to be made here. It's just about figuring out what's right for you. Now, let's go a little deeper than that, right? There are some categories that are sort of universal. There's emotional boundaries, boundaries around your feelings. There are sexual boundaries around what you'll do or won't do with respect to your sexuality. There are physical boundaries. Do you want to be touched in a certain way at a certain time in a certain context or not? There are energetic boundaries. So you can set boundaries with respect to other people's energy and your energy. This is a really important one for people who are empathic or highly sensitive. Being able to delineate between your own energy and other people's energy becomes very important, particularly if you are in any kind of profession that requires you to be giving a lot, just in any kind of giving profession. You need to be able to figure out how to set these energetic boundaries so that you're not constantly being overwhelmed by somebody else's feelings without realizing that they are not your feelings. There are intellectual boundaries. Those are your thoughts and beliefs. You are able to have whatever opinions you have, and so is everyone else. You don't have to agree with everyone all the time. But, those are boundaries that you can set. You can have your opinions and other people can have their opinions, and those can be separated. There are financial boundaries. It's about money. If you want to save money, not spend money. If you want to spend money, not save money. Those are boundaries that you set. Maybe you don't loan your money to your friends who spend all their money on things that you don't agree with, right? These are the kind of boundaries you can set. And then, as we were talking about in sort of the beginning of this episode, boundaries with yourself. In my opinion, these are the most important things you can learn. How to set a boundary for yourself, about yourself, is how you learn to set boundaries in the first place. So if you can have the ability to tell yourself, you know, whether it's about food or sleep or exercise or reading a book to help you learn something, or anything related to you or your body or the way you speak to yourself, or the kinds of goals you want to set for yourself. These are the kinds of boundaries that make it easier for you to learn to set boundaries with other people, and the way that you are able to treat yourself with kindness and respect. Hopefully, these are the kinds of boundaries you want to be setting. You don't want to be setting boundaries that are mean, right? Like that, there's no point to doing that. So you want to set loving and respectful boundaries for yourself and then stick to them, because when you show up for yourself, then you can show up for other people if you want to, right? But you have to learn to show up for yourself.
Let's take a quick break. And then I want to come back and I'll share my theory that like all boundaries are actually self boundaries, but
Yes.
but let's just take a quick break and we will be right back. Tova here. I'll admit, when I think of a coach, I immediately think knee-high socks, whistles, and clipboards. Is it because I love Ted Lasso?
Maybe. I mean, I think it's a good look for you, if I'm being honest.
Thanks, I think. Anyway, that's not the kind of coaching we want to talk to you all about.
True. We are talking about life and transition coaching, though I do still love a clipboard and a tube sock.
Both Riley and I are lucky to have worked with incredible coaches throughout our lives.
Before that, though, we struggled with where to start, believing in what coaching could really do for us, and, of course, putting ourselves first.
Taking the leap and working with our coaches made all the difference. They gave us direction and support when we needed it most.
Now, we are fortunate enough to be coaches ourselves, and we're excited to pay it forward.
We can help you figure out where to start, create a roadmap, keep you accountable, and get to living your limitless life.
Sounds pretty great. So if you want to figure out your next steps, check out our services at goboldlyinitiative.com/services.
We can't wait to talk to you. Now, back to the show. And welcome back. So, as you were talking, I was thinking about these boundaries that one sets. And, especially when you talk about how we set these boundaries because we love and respect ourselves. And, we first started talking about how boundaries can be sort of almost guidance for other people, because it's like, this is what I expect of the people that are in my life. But when you turn it the other way, I think of when you set these self boundaries as saying, like, this is what I will allow. Like, this is what I will allow someone to treat me, how I will allow someone to treat me. This is what I will allow to have someone make me feel. Now, I know that nobody can make you feel a certain way, but you can say like I will not allow this. And that is, to me, that has very little to do with the other person.
Yeah.
Because I think as we get older, we realize that like other people don't really think about us nearly as much as we think they do.
Right.
And they don't care about us. And I don't mean that like they don't care about you, but like they don't actually care about the things that we think they care about nearly as much as we think they do.
Right. And you can set that boundary around your reaction, right?
Right.
That's where the boundary comes. That's, if you're looking for a physical place to locate your boundary, right? Because you're a visual learner or whatever, or you just need that sort of understanding of, but wait, what are you talking about? There's no boundary there. There is. The boundary is around your reaction to the action of the other person involved, right? So if the other person is getting mad at you or for some reason or is being mean or says something and is hurtful, the boundary is around how you yourself react to the action. And so you can choose how to react. You might have hurt feelings, and that's natural and okay. But how you manage those hurt feelings is the boundary. So, do you fly off the handle and start screaming and yelling? Do you become hysterical and cry for, months on end? How do you handle that situation is the boundary setting experience. And that's, it's harder than, it sounds, or maybe
I
it
think
sounds
it
really
sounds really
hard.
difficult. So, yeah, and I think also like setting the boundary to be like, I don't have to be around somebody whose behavior results in, like, I don't want to say makes me feel, but results in me feeling this way.
Yeah.
And, part of me wants to say, well, there are certain relationships that you can't avoid. And I would argue that apart from like a parent caring for their child, there's almost no relationship you can't avoid.
Correct.
There are people in my life who have set boundaries with their parents who don't see their parents. And it's really sad and it really sucks for them and it makes them sad, but they're also freer to live their life without the stress and the, dare I say, drama that this person brings to their life. And
Right.
so they're actually recognizing that everyone's not in a position to just like quit their job at a moment's notice. But
Right.
beyond, beyond that, there are very few relationships that we can't set boundaries, and some of them can be pretty significant boundaries. And I would even argue that even, what I have found is if I have an uncomfortable reaction to a random person's behavior, whether it's like a teacher at my kid's school, I don't think I've had that, but just as an example, or a neighbor, like in all likelihood, it has nothing to do with this random person and something to do with somebody else. So that's probably a boundary that I can easily set with them as like a practice boundary for like an issue with the other person,
Right.
where this is actually like, upsetting me. And what's interesting is and we say this almost all the time, and we said it in the last episode, but as you become more aware of yourself and more aware of where you need to set boundaries and what you're willing to do, it's easier to identify like, oh, like I'm reacting to you because you remind me of this person.
Yeah. Or this situation
Or this situation
thing I've been through or whatever
or yeah,
it
that
is.
time
Yeah.
that this happened.
Yeah.
What you're doing actually is only like tangentially related to that. And
Yep.
so I'm going to be able to deal with this. Like I
Right.
can move past that. So yeah, this is, we've talked for 5 minutes, but every boundary is really somehow a self boundary
Yeah.
and has a lot less to do with the people in front of you, because we've said this as well many times, you can't control other people's actions.
You can't. And attempting to do so either makes you resentful, manipulative, or exhausted, or all three, right? That urge to control, if you have it, the urge to control everyone around you is something that becomes it becomes consuming. And so if you're spending all your time trying to control your environment, you're not enjoying your life, right? You're just spending your time trying to manage everything all the time, and you're not present. You're not enjoying your family or your friends or your work or whatever, whatever it is that you do on a regular basis. You're spending your time worrying about what might happen or what happened before or who's doing what or who's saying what or who's thinking what. It becomes that sort of snowball effect of you're constantly trying to manage everything instead of living your life and enjoying whatever is in front of you. And so this is why we think and why we're talking about boundaries, because when you set good, healthy boundaries, you are actually delimiting your life. Is that a word? I just made it up. I don't know.
Uncontrolling.
You're letting go, right? You're letting go of that need to control everything by saying, this is who I am. This is my, these are my priorities. This is my value. I know how much I'm worth. And I don't mean how much I'm worth like dollars, but I know my worth. I know my
Lots of
value.
money.
Yeah, it's a lot. I know that I am worth the respect that I'm asking for, and the response that I'm asking for from both myself and the outside world. And if I am not willing to give it to myself and the outside world is not willing to give it to me, then I will move on to someone else who is. And that's okay. Like, the people who fall away from you when you set boundaries are not your people. And that doesn't mean
Yeah.
they're bad people. It just means they're not your people, right? Like, we have to move beyond this need to judge and shame and move into the world where not everybody is for everybody, and that is an acceptable experience to have. Like, not everyone's going to like you. You're not going to like
Yes.
everyone, and that is okay. We don't have to be liked by everybody to be good people and to be quality people. And that's really hard to accept because we're conditioned to want to be liked. I mean, who doesn't want to be liked? I want to be liked.
I think it's great.
You want to be like, it feels good, right? Like, when people don't like me, it doesn't feel good. But it doesn't mean I'm a bad person. It just means they don't like me, and that's okay. And
Right.
then I
Well,
can
and
move
it's funny
on.
because if you don't like somebody, like a random person, you don't necessarily think they're a bad person either.
Right.
They're just
Just
not for you. But
right.
somehow when you flip it, it's like, oh my God, I'm a bad person.
Right.
And this, it's interesting because I'm picking up on all of these different themes. Because at first I was like, embracing your power. Why are we talking about boundaries again? Like, is this just because I
If you
need like
can't tell everybody,
therapy?
I've made us talk about boundaries.
Okay, again. But it's the same reason we were talking about honesty when it comes to embracing your power,
Yeah,
because the less energy you spend on doing certain things, the more energy you have to open up the rest of your life.
that's
So
right.
in the last episode, we said, being honest can be stressful and scary and hard, but it's a lot easier than telling lies, white lies, just kind of trying to keep all the balls in the air.
Yeah,
And I feel the same way here uh, with when it comes to setting boundaries, because setting a boundary for yourself or others, which all is really for yourself, but you know what I'm saying, can be hard and stressful and scary, but not as hard and stressful as scary as dealing with your life where you haven't set any boundaries and you're trying to keep all the balls in the air. And so, you know, um, it's sort of the moral to these two stories, because this whole season is about being able to deal with your stuff so you can step into your own power and,
right.
step into the sunshine that is your power. And so sometimes that means figuring out where you need to set your boundaries, so that whether it's, I need to set boundaries with my family because, my boundaries could be like, I do not accept living in a home where I am the only one who contributes to the home by cleaning it and putting things away. And like, that is not for me. This means everybody else needs to pick up the slack a little bit. And so that could theoretically open up space and time and brain power. And I also think this goes, and I have a feeling this will come up in more episodes in the future, but resentment takes up so much space. And I don't know if this is like a new thing or an old thing or like a come around thing, but like that saying or concept of like they're living in your head rent free. That's kind of how I think about it when it's like when you're not setting boundaries. You're letting this stuff and these other people like live in your head rent free, and you're sort of just stuck dealing with it. You kick them out of your head. Just set the boundary. Kick them
Yeah.
out.
Yeah. We do need to take another quick break. So let's do that. When we come back, we can talk about a little bit more about why boundaries are so important when it comes to embracing your power. So we'll be right back, everyone. In case you didn't already know, we love talking.
True story. More than simply talking, we love researching, prepping, and bringing this podcast to life.
We launched We Go Boldly with the goal of reaching people dealing with the kinds of questions and concerns that we also face.
Things like how to hear my inner voice, how to make sure my habits are worth it and stick, how do I feel my feelings and still manage to function.
After years of personal work and lots of trial and error, we realized we have a lot to share on these topics.
Now we've been broadcasting for over a year, and we are proud of our podcast.
And to no one's surprise, we still have a lot to say and talk about.
We sure do. We need your help to keep going. Every episode takes time and money to create, and we would love your support.
So, if you like what we are doing, please support us by joining our Patreon community and becoming a monthly subscriber.
Join our Patreon community today at patreon.com/wegoboldly. We are so grateful to all of our supporters. Now, back to the show.
Okay, welcome back. So before the break, we were talking about why and how boundaries matter in this season of talking about embracing our power. And as Tova was saying, boundaries are something we have talked about since the beginning of this podcast, of starting the whole podcast itself. And so why, right? Why are we talking about boundaries today when we're talking about power and embracing your power? And Tova, as you were saying, it is very much about clearing out space and room so that you can embrace your power and your own power and not build up everybody else's power with, giving away your time and your energy and your emotional legwork, right? Like that's, which I feel like so many of us do by constantly saying yes to things we don't have time or energy for, by picking up the slack for somebody else who is, dumping on us for the 100th time. But boundaries help in countless ways. They build greater self-esteem. They improve your self-awareness. They help us get clear on who we are, what we want, what our values and belief systems are. They bring focus to ourselves, to our well-being. They enhance your mental health, your emotional well-being. They help us avoid burnout by helping us say no, right? As just a full sentence, no. They help us develop independence and gain a greater sense of identity. So all of these things are about embracing power, right? Everything I just listed is about embracing your power. And as we go through the season, boundaries are going to keep coming up, because when you are trying to figure out who you are, follow your pathway, raise a family if that's what you're doing, take care of pets if that's what you're doing, take care of aging parents if that's what you're doing, hold down a job, run a business, find a partner, nurture a relationship, live on this planet, deal with all the political things going on, go through life, because life is hectic and hard and busy. As you're doing all of that, if you are not setting boundaries, you will be crushed by the weight of the expectations being put on you, right? That is what happens. And so boundaries, which we're all setting all the time, it's just some of us set more than others, and some of us are, more attuned to setting boundaries. if you start doing it with some intentionality behind it, with some, okay, I'm going to actually like pay attention to what I'm doing and I'm going to start setting these boundaries because I want my life to be on my terms and go in the direction that I want it to go. If you start doing that, that's how you start embracing your power. That's how you start feeling your core space come into play and your core values will come into play. And then you can start making decisions based on those core values. You can go, oh, you know what? I know I'm not going to stay late at work and plan the company barbecue for free. No, I'm not going to do that. Why would I be doing that? Nobody
Yeah.
else is doing that.
All the headlines call it quiet quitting. It's really just setting boundaries.
Right. And so it it comes into play in every conversation we're having. We just don't bring it up every time. And you're already doing it. Like I don't know anyone that's not doing it.
So that's what I just wanted to say. So I had an aha moment when you were talking, because you said that we all are setting boundaries every day. And I want to expand on that and say we are just sometimes not being intentional about those boundaries, and we are not deciding where the boundary is. Like
Right.
there's that saying of like, I won't cross that line. Like our boundaries are just really far away. So
Yes.
you have been setting the boundary. You have been allowing yourself to be treated that way. And when I say that, I am not talking about people in abusive relationships. I'm
No,
not
that's very
talking
different.
about, I want to very clearly say that I'm not saying you're letting this happen. So full stop right there. But in a genuinely healthy kind of world, your boundary is just super far away. You can't even see it, but you're setting it. And so I don't know, this is like a big aha moment. Like we actually all know how to set the boundaries. We just oftentimes aren't intentional with them. And so the boundaries are not where we've decided that they should be. We just allow things to happen to us. And then the other thing, as you were talking about, because we have realized that even though this concept of embracing our power should be a joyful celebration, a lot of the topics that we're going to be talking about this season are very heavy and hard to talk about. And so what I do want to say is to bring some joy to the conversation, that this gives you space. Setting boundaries gives you space for the joy, for the happiness. It could quite literally give you time in your day, or it could just give your brain the opportunity to take a breath and relax. Like it could be a like literal manifestation of my friend who I saw, who's like, I've set boundaries with my time at work now, and I can go on dates and I can go to the farmer's market on Sunday. Or it can just be, my head is more calm, my heart is more calm, and thus there is space for other happier things. And so my goal every episode is to like infuse some of like the happies.
Yes.
Like there's a reason we're slogging through this hard work, is because there's a reason to do it.
Yeah.
And the joy is the reason.
There's a big payout, right? Like there's a
Yeah.
huge payout at the end of the road here. It's not it's not all grim and sadness.
Right.
And I don't know why I'm laughing through that, but I guess only because I know that it is worth it. It's worth the hard work. It's worth putting in the energy it takes to figure these things out, because your life gets so exponentially better as you go through the work and as you make the effort. It makes things easier, lighter, better, more pleasant, and not every second of every day, obviously, because that's not how life works. But in the long run, it is just, I can't tell you how much better my life gets every time I go through this process.
I'm chuckling because my boys heard an advertisement or something on, I don't know, NFL Network or something. And it was like, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day of your life. And my 10-year-old was like, oh, that's true. And I was like, no, it's not. I was like, it's not.
Lies.
I was like, you will love what you do. And it is awesome. And it is amazing to love what you do. But there will be days where you're like, ugh, I don't want to do this. And I was like, And I just think we should set that expectation.
Right?
Like, you will love what you do, and it will make your life immensely better to find that joy in what you do. But there will still be days where you're like, I don't like this.
There'll be days where you're like, I really just want to go to the beach.
Like, I just think about like, I would like, I desperately wanted to like work with marine mammals at a zoo when I was a kid. And I bet it would have been amazing. But
Yeah.
there's still day where I'm like, every day my hands are in fish guts because I'm
Right.
feeding the dolphin. Like,
Yeah.
like, and it
Yeah.
would have been amazing. But once again, fish guts. Um, Today or yesterday, I heard someone say something about the word rejoice
Mm.
and how, because it's like doing more joicing because you're rejoicing. And now I will never be able to hear the word rejoice without thinking of that.
That's
But
fantastic.
it is to give joy to. And that is what I think of, because I did look up the definition while we were talking. Rejoice as a verb is to give joy to. And that's what embracing your power can allow. And that's what setting boundaries can allow. I don't know why the word joyce is not a word and why we just rejoice. But either way, I think it's a word that hopefully we'll say more than once on this podcast this
Yeah.
season.
I like it. I like that. It's good. So I think we're going to wrap up and get into some homework. And we mentioned this last time, but we really encourage you guys to think about doing the mission statement course. It would be really helpful for you in the process. And it's not just because we wrote the course and we want you to do it and we love it and we think it's great.
Although
All
we
of
do
which is
love it and
true.
think it's great. Yeah.
But when you start to understand your core values and your core purpose, and then you have that mission statement available to you, it just makes your life easier because it's there and you're like, oh, I have to make a decision and oh, I don't know what I want to do. And then you look at it and you're like, oh, okay. These things align with my mission. Okay, great. And I don't know, like, why wouldn't you? It makes life easier. So we would encourage you guys to think about doing that course. If you have questions, reach out to us. We're happy to talk to you about it. We found that it made our lives easier, and that's
Yeah.
why we wrote it. Because we were like, oh, well, we needed a little guidance, so we wrote ourselves some guidance, which sounds crazy, but true. So there's that, and then also, as Tova mentioned, we started our Go Boldly Together circle. We meet every week, and it's a community for women to come together and lift each other up in community, in sisterhood, in I don't know how else to describe it. It's a wonderful place for us to help each other work through some of these things in a more sort of close-knit way and to help each other figure out some of this stuff together. So if you're interested, you can find us on our website or you can find us on our Instagram bio. Let us know if you have any questions. We're happy to answer anything that you want to know. And we are very excited about that. But for your homework this week, more journaling, which we know you love. When it comes to boundaries, the key thing is to start brainstorming, right? To start being aware of what you're doing. As we were talking about earlier, you're already setting boundaries. It's just, where are your boundaries? Are they healthy or are they not healthy? So what I would like to see you do is write down a list of the 5 most important relationships in your life. And who knows what they are? I don't know. But the 5 most important relationships in your life. So whoever they are, write them down and then think about what is going on in those relationships. How are they working for you? Are there boundaries there? I guess that's the baseline question. Do you have boundaries in those relationships? Can you think of what they are? What do they look like? Where are the boundaries? Are they healthy? Do you feel good about them? Start to really notice it. And if you don't know right away, just put it in your mind and start paying attention for the next week or so.
Mm-hmm.
Keep an eye on it. Are those people in that list doing things in your life that feel good for you or not? And then after a few days, come back to your journal and start taking some notes. If the answers are healthy, great. If they're not, how can you make some adjustments? And as always, reach out to us on social media. Let us know how it's going. If you have questions, reach out to us anytime. We're always here, and we'd love to hear from you. And we will be back next week with another episode on embracing your power. So until then, everyone have a fantastic week.
Thanks so much for listening to We Go Boldly podcast. We know you're busy and we love spending time with you.
If you enjoyed this week's episode, let us know. Head to Apple Podcasts right now to rate and review our show. While you're there, be sure to click that subscribe button.
Want more us time? Follow us on all the socials at Go Boldly Together.
Want even more us time? As in all the coaching pizzazz. Find us at goboldlyinitiative.com for all the info.
We will be back with more excitement, research, and deep thoughts next week.
Until then, keep on being the bold, brave, amazing people we know you already are.
The Power Moms Network, empowering moms to lift the world.